Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Project Pro AI Monetization Podcast. I'm Binny, the co-founder. As you know, we speak with industry leaders and AI practitioners on what tangible business outcomes they are seeing with AI. Financial services has been an area that we have been focused a lot on. And today we have with us Jayeeta. Jayeeta is the lead data scientist and director in the AI Center of Excellence at Fitch Ratings. Fitch obviously is the world leader focused on credit ratings that hundreds and thousands of investors and financial institutions rely on to make their investment decisions. Previously, Jayeeta spent some time with NVIDIA as an enterprise platform advisor. Jayeeta has also been awarded the AI 100 focused on GenAI 2024 and has been recognized among the top 25 visionary women in FinTech AI. Her research in AI focused on financial inclusion has been presented at conferences including ACM and AAAI. Jayeeta also finds time to be the New York City chapter lead for women in AI. Jayeeta, thank you for taking time to do this. Welcome to this podcast.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Vinny, for hosting me, and very excited to be here and talk about AI in finance, my favorite
Awesome.
subject ever.
Perfect. Jayeeta, just like you were chatting before we started recording, right? The ground is kind of moving beneath our feet on how quickly things come out. But
Yeah.
finance as an industry is pretty, structured. It can't move that fast given the regulatory and given the amount of people that rely on the kind of stuff that you put out there. How do you
Yeah.
balance these two things broadly in finance?
Yeah. So, like you very rightly said, if you every day I wake up and
Mhm,
I open my LinkedIn or say Google, I see there are three different models, five different frameworks from two different companies, and people, fighting what the benchmark is. If the benchmark is true, is the event is like really adding value, or do we need another huge parameterized trained model? So you
mhm,
see, it is in Flask, and that everybody is trying to utilize it in some way or form or other. In finance, there is definitely a lot of scope for applications, especially since in most of the data we process, at least from the PDF and different annual reports, 10K reports, ESG reports, sustainability reports, even marketing materials, they are all unstructured data. Like it's in PDF, some are in docs. Uh, and PDF itself is like a huge, different frame of unstructured documents. There's
mhm,
a lot of potential, but I think what
mhm,
trying to get to is that how we integrate some of these solutions into the current workflow that
mhm,
our analysts or say whoever our end users and customers use is
mhm.
the critical point of adoption, as well as making sure that it's really adding value. I do
Yeah.
not we Tech companies have the resources, or I would say the motivation, to kind of fight in this whose LLM is the biggest and the most powerful. But for enterprise, we need to figure out what works for us. It can be a large language model trained on, like, I don't know, the biggest parameters, or it could be a SLM that was just trained on or post trained on our specific kind of data. And to
Mhm,
make that decision, we need financial leaders who have been in the space to think in a more broader way of how do
mhm,
we utilize this technology to the best of our ability to fix our problems. We really are not like focused on what the the latest models can do, but can it
mhm,
solve my problem? Then yes,
mhm,
I'm interested in it. Let's figure out how to do that. So I think that is the mindset we have to keep in mind. Otherwise, I think at the pace at which the industry is moving forward, there's going to be a time when some organizations early adopting this technology will be a little ahead, and
mhm,
the rest fall behind. So we don't want that.
mhm. Makes sense. And while you're evaluating these use cases and technologies, right, in finance, what are among the highest ROI use cases you think? Yeah,
Yeah.
both in terms of impact of LLM, impact of AI to unlock value, and in terms of significant pain, like a combination of these two. Yeah.
I think the biggest area, and I have seen this firsthand, not only like my only domain, but across financial industry when I speak to peers and like leaders in the space,
Mhm,
document intelligence and processing. It's a humongous task for our like backend users, our analysts, anybody who's processing that kind of data every day,
Mm,
be it for
mm,
training, be it for rating, be it for research, be it for any kind of financial task. It's huge, and it's petabytes of data, all unstructured. And some of the times we have heard like the increase in performance, or I would say increase in productivity from the say analyst side has been like more than 10 hours for per document. Why I say that, like say if you have one document that has I don't know, 500 pages, and it's a
mhm.
very complicated financial document, you have multiple of those, and after you have reviewed like say 10 of those, that's each, I don't know, like 150, 500 pages, you
Yeah.
kind of have to come back, reorganize your thought, identify spaces of where the key information sits, put it somewhere, like document it somewhere in a logical way, and then come up with like your reasonings, or whatever, be it you're publishing a report, or you're publishing a market research. So that takes tremendous amount of manual like focus, constant iteration over that same text again and again. So how can we utilize some of these GenAI capabilities very in a structured process flow,
Mm,
where say we have like a document storage, we can do advanced rag on it, we can even like utilize some of our custom trained models to identify specific key areas that say analysts are like looking for when they are trying to like communicate. We can like build a quick UI where it can serve as like a conversational platform for them to ask quick questions and get to the key highlight points, rather than
mm,
going through like, I don't know, like 10 documents again and again and seeing, okay, where did I see this, how did I note it, did I note the sources correctly, can I go back and refer. So I mean that pipeline has like a opportunity of reducing, I don't know, 50 to 60% of manual work time, as well as keep making sure that every step we have human overview, and they can
mhm.
stop the process whenever they want. They can go
Yeah.
in each stage and see what the previous stage has outputted, and
Mhm.
that's the the, I would say, segmented or like fragmented but coherent steps needs to be built end to end.
Yeah. Yeah. So document kind of understanding or document processing is a huge one. Is there a second one that comes even close to that, Jeta?
Yeah. Yeah, I would say I would say front end customer service.
Mm,
That's the most amount of visibility, most
mhm,
amount of interactions, and the
mhm.
most amount of time spent, where I feel some of the financial organizations, be it bank or be it insurance companies, are trying to personalize it in some form, because I'm
Yeah.
sure all of us have interacted with some form of bots, right? And we remember
Yeah.
bots like pre-GPT era. It was really a menace. And I have created
Mm,
some of the bots for some of my previous organizations. And I can tell you, even as
mhm,
like a builder, I was frustrated that, hey, I am asking you this question. You are most of the time going into like a fallback, because
mm,
again, natural language processing was tricky then, with before the pre-GPT era, and it was
mhm.
always falling back into like one single link. Okay, here is your FAQs, take a look. That's not
Correct.
useful for me as a user. I don't want
Correct.
to read like a 500 page, like give me exactly where. So that has significantly changed, and I'm
Mm,
sure you see thousands of customer service and chatbot companies popping up, each trying to solve for one vertical,
yeah.
and specialize in that. Now you can literally, I know some of the products where you can like raise Jira tickets from like just asking a question.
Oh,
Jira, like
wow.
like we
Yeah.
create like
Yeah.
agile flows, and my say
Mhm,
Mac is not working and I am stuck somewhere. I am
mhm,
just trying, and I don't have access to maybe say Jira directly to open a ticket. You can just like write in the chat that I am having an issue with my Jira, my Mac not working. Open a ticket as like a high priority to your service desk, and
mhm.
they open it up. And there are so many similar use cases that me as like a from the tech side data scientist might have not thought about, but that is why I like this integration or partnership between tech and business,
Mhm.
trying to figure out what are our bottlenecks, what are our workflows that we absolutely have to keep, like uptime has to be 100%, and then
Mhm.
how do we make sure that we really make them make those processes more personalized, more nuanced for even your internal employees as well as customers, because the
Yeah.
previous Jira question was for internal employees, right? And
Mhm.
if I'm an internal employee and I have that tool, I'll be happy that, okay, I don't
Yeah.
have to go and write my own Jira ticket, which is great.
Mhm. Hmm.
Yeah, saves me a lot of time and a headache.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
there, why I am highlighting is that there are so many nuanced processes that sometimes people overlook that, hey,
Mm.
don't really need to bother about it. I have to solve, I don't know, like the most biggest, take the most biggest problem, the model to kind of solve my most biggest problem. But
Yeah.
then the times you see the return on investment on some of these very low hanging fruit, as they call,
Hmm.
it's easy to implement. It's easy to track
Yeah.
success.
Hmm.
That would be like your employee retention, your employee happiness. Are they, how much time are they spending on doing some of these admin work rather than
Hmm.
focusing on their actual work?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we really need to think through the best use cases, and that's where the most of the success lies for some of these technology.
Makes sense.
Mhm.
And after you pick a couple of use cases across, let's say, document processing and personalized customer relationship management, right? Now, usually there is a spectrum of ways one can solve a use case. At
Yep.
the most basic way, somebody could use Copilot, load in an earnings release, and ask questions. The second step is probably they can open up a Jupyter notebook, write some code, pull some APIs, and if they could do that. The third would be maybe you could buy a off-the-shelf AI SaaS solution. There's plenty of that right now.
Mhm.
Fourth, you could build it internally. Fifth, you could, call up Accenture or somebody and tell them to custom build it. Uh,
Yeah.
could you maybe help us understand what kind of stakeholder for what kind of use case would go for these various approaches? How does that fall out in a
Yeah.
large enterprise?
That's a great question, and if I can
Mhm.
solve for that question, I'll be a CEO of some company someday, which is
Okay.
hopefully going to happen. But I'll
Yeah.
tell you what I see and what I've been seeing in the industry.
Hmm.
Like, say,
Hmm.
let's talk about agents, right? Everybody wants
Yeah.
to build with agents, but we do not know, or like the industry as a whole in finance do not know how easy it's going to be for us to build an agent and forget about it. It's not going to
Yeah.
happen at, we have to have like strict evaluation processes as well as human oversight at each step. So
Hmm.
let's say we take a uh, I don't know, like say topic research or market research, because that's one
Yeah.
big area where people spend a lot of time, like Googling, figuring out sources, mapping PDF resources. So, is that a good resource, or would say good use case to start with? Maybe experimenting with like the first step you said, maybe
Hmm.
quickly spin up a copilot, or in any some of these copilots, right? There's I think the name copilot has become so ubiquitous to so many things. Everybody has a support copilot, but
Yeah.
yeah, my point is, how can you spin up quickly where you don't have to really bother about the backend GPUs or the backend infrastructure? All you need to do is create a knowledge base, add your requirements, and then put a prompt that's very heavy enough to do that research for you. That's step
Yeah.
one.
Hmm.
That has less risk. Why I say that? Because it's internal to you, because it's focused for only your research, and you're not
Hmm.
exposing that to additional
Hmm.
people. Nobody's
Hmm.
looking at it
Hmm.
to have like direct impact. So maybe
Hmm.
start there for that kind of use case, spinning up your own quick agent to kind of
Hmm.
aggregate links, aggregate reports, aggregate it in like one small report for you to review.
Hmm.
Next, you said, okay, can we like, open up a Jupyter notebook and call in some codes? Of course, like you can utilize some of these Azure or like Google or like AWS frameworks where you can
Yeah.
create custom agentic framework. Even if it's not agent, like even if you're trying to build like say an advanced RAG, because some of the
Yeah.
use cases you still see can be solved by advanced RAG, and you really don't need to like create agents.
Yeah.
You can build in call in different databases, different
Hmm.
metadata. You can maybe create a small knowledge graph, because sometimes having smaller maintainable knowledge graphs that can add metadatas to your queries to make it
Hmm.
really more augmented is the
Hmm.
goal. And some of the use cases I can think of is like say search. Like I'm sure
Hmm.
you know, like in finance, like we have data marketplaces across that has different kinds of data. Some are
Hmm.
like very unstructured, some has very structured data that was already extracted, or maybe
Hmm.
directly coming from the trading side. How do you
Hmm.
really search through everything, making sure you're just not doing keyword search, you are doing advanced semantic search, or and
Hmm.
your search has the capability to search across different types of databases? That's not easy.
Hmm.
Like you can do maybe one search directly in MongoDB or like any unstructured database, but
Yeah.
then how do you kind of collate it together and bring the information out? And
Fine.
see the PDFs today, it's not only text. There's infographics, there's images, there's tables that looks like
Yeah.
tables, but
Yeah.
actually images. How do you
Mhm.
process each of these separately and make sure? So maybe that's a good use case for the RAG based framework that you're developing in your Jupyter notebook, and then
Mhm.
productionizing it. I
Mhm.
would only talk about the other, all of that you said, maybe a third party solution,
Mhm.
that when really you do not have the resources internally, and
Mhm.
the process that you're trying to build is also that something already been built. Like I said,
Mhm.
if you go and look up some of these startups that's doing really well, what
Mhm.
they're doing well is that they're trying to solve, using this foundational LLMs, some
Mhm.
vertical problems, and
Mhm.
each vertical problem is very niche. Like
Mhm.
say you focus just solving the document processing flow of financial documents. There's a company that only deals with unstructured data and
Mhm.
just cleans up your unstructured data pipeline to see how focused and niche these applications are. And if
Mhm.
those problems, and you take a demo and you go deep and you review the process, and if it feels that it solves your problem, I do not
Mhm.
see a reason why you would want to reinvent the wheel with your
Yeah.
limited resources, limited time, rather than focusing on the business implementation to kind
Yeah.
of build a tech stack. So that is
Mhm.
when you kind of review, and that's the entire buy versus build discussion, right? When is it that you are actually looking to buy versus building based on your niche problem that you're trying to solve? So I mean, there's a lot of discussion. It has to come from leadership, discussion with the tech people, what how they're
Yeah.
building, seeing challenges, bottleneck, and then kind of you take a decision based on the investment versus return that you're expecting. But
Yeah.
there's a lot happening, and I feel it can be a mix of both worlds.
Yeah.
You really have to do one or the other.
Mhm.
That
That's a
was a
very
long,
nice.
yeah,
Sorry,
long-winded
no,
answer.
but it's a very nice walkthrough of for every stakeholder, for every use case, what channel will you go to for a solution? That is a very nice breakdown. Um, the other thing I was curious about was uh, going back to our first topic of discussion, which is things are moving so fast, right? So
Mhm.
you've decided these use cases, and let's say that you're building something internally.
Mhm.
What do you start off as a reference point on where to start? Like which model, which technique, like what is that reference point? Who decides that? And are there instances where somebody would read something on some newsletter today and say, "Hey, let's try that"? Like how does that whole flow work inside?
Right. So i- it's little, it depends, right?
Mhm.
It has a lot of moving parts. I would say the
Yeah.
first step I usually always tell or like encourage, and what I've also heard from my peers is that you start with that industry benchmark that I was talking about, like
Mm.
what are built for what. Like if you look into some of the recent reasoning based models that has come up from both OpenAI as well as Claude, what they
Mhm.
excel in is like more complicated turn conversations, as well as complicated reasoning or like processing of the data, and then finding some, I would say, I'm hesitating to say it reason for a lot of reasons, but but I think the goal here is to highlight that can it do the point mapping, that why is it coming up with this process, and then give you some reference points that okay, step one, step two, step three, I tried this, and this is what I
Yeah.
find. So that
Mhm.
kind of helps you think through the process a little bit more if
Mm.
your work is that complicated. Sometimes some
Mhm.
workflows are not that complicated, and we really don't need reasoning models for that. Like I said, smaller SLMs work better if you have
Mhm.
a good relation with your business counterpart, and you can get some of their subject matter experts time. You can
Yeah.
build up a small level of very uh, compact but very clean and perfect data set that you can then use for your fine tuning, or even use
Mhm.
it as like a, I would say, few shot based model training if you don't want to go through the entire fine tuning process. Again,
Mhm.
that depends on what kind of complexity the problem has, as well
Yeah.
as what are you really trying to achieve. If it's achievable by just a prompt, maybe use a large language model, see where
Mhm.
you're failing. If that
Yeah.
fail point is more perfection, try it with
Mhm.
like a few shot model, because
Yeah.
that will give you more insight, or the model more insight on what kind of output you're looking for. If
Yeah.
again you see some fail points, maybe now it's a good time to think about really fine tuning it for your purpose,
Mhm.
and fine tuning in the post training phase to fine tuning for your use case. But I think
Mhm.
the logic behind each step is that start with the easiest implementation, see where your fail points are, identify gaps that could be filled potentially quickly, and that is where
Yeah.
you quickly get some good quality data gathered from business. Try it
Hmm.
with few shots, again, then go step by step. So easy to hard, easy implementation to hardest implementation, uh, kind of makes our life in the tech side also easier, because then we
Yeah.
can show to business that, hey, look, it works, but this is
Hmm.
where it fails, so help us fill this gap for you. Otherwise,
Yeah.
like, think about a situation where you wait like for 3 months and then go back to business and say, oh, this doesn't work for the 100% accuracy. There's going to
Right.
be frustration and trust issues. So how do you
Right.
build that rapport and trust and business a real impact by
Right.
like building iteration, and building quickly in iteration is the
Yeah.
goal, and
Okay.
is the back. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a balance. Some very good points you made there, and I had some follow-ups on one's accuracy, SLMs, and the whole few shot fine-tuning thing, right? So one is, given that in financial services, that apart from the unstructured data, there's a lot of quantitative data as well. And with the whole probabilistic nature of what LLMs work on, whenever you
Mm.
encounter quantitative data, do you send it through a separate non-LLM workflow for calculations, or for accuracy, or is it part of the whole LLM processing? How do you think about that?
Yeah. So without getting into very
Uh,
specific areas of how we are doing, what I've seen in
mhm,
the industry is that,
mhm,
yes, LLMs may not perform the best in the quantitative format of the data.
mhm,
There's a lot of other ways.
mhm,
Why I say that is because I'm very interested in this space called causal analysis. I'm sure, like, in it was always there in finance, but it was like,
mhm,
kind of stuck under like more statistical and like, predictive modeling techniques. But causal AI
mhm,
is coming back right now, because in Gen AI, to validate and ground some of the outputs
mhm,
at scale, it's
mhm,
not, human in the loop is always good, but it's not possible to review it at scale if we are trying to make sure that each output we generate is
mhm,
actually reviewed and it's
mhm,
like there's no gap in output. So
mhm,
causal analysis is one process that can definitely add a lot of value.
mhm.
Why I bring that up, because not all Gen AI models, even if they're reasoning models, can really handle complicated logics. It can maybe handle, if you upload an Excel and ask easy questions that, hey,
Yeah,
what was I don't know, like, sales for like last quarter, maybe it will be able to do that calculation faster or
yeah,
mm, easily. But when you
mhm,
think about multiple moving parts, that, oh, GDP increased and price inflation was this much, and there was this monetary policy that came out, and there was this global event that happened, aggregating all this data in a more logical, complex rule or a statistical model is still not
yeah,
possible in AI. So we
mhm,
need that supportive support of the logical workflow. But what we can do
mhm,
is that once we have that, and we try to, like, aggregate all of that information using some large language model, and then use more of like a causal outputs to kind of baseline or ground the Gen AI output, seeing that how much off it is from, say, you run your what if analysis in causal, and then you have like a range of data, and then you kind of map it back, that is, am I falling under this radar, is the range there, how much am I off, am I completely off, and then
mhm.
you kind of tune that Gen AI pipeline more to meet that process, if that makes sense.
That makes sense. Yeah, makes sense. Yeah, makes sense. And just sticking with accuracy, right? Which is you mentioned this sequence of things of SLMs, a few shot, injecting it through a prompt, and also fine tuning. Um,
Mhm.
when it comes to, let's say, few shot and fine tuning, right? I know it depends on use case, but roughly what quantum of data
Mm.
after which you see things accuracy getting really well, either in few shot or fine tuning? Do you need 100 records, 10,000 records? What order of magnitude of data are we talking about usually?
Yeah. So again, it really depends. Like, say,
Hmm.
I can give an example. Say, if you are trying to build a very simple classification model. Classification is a very generic procedure that's always been there, but now
Mm,
classification is for classes that is not defined. Think about, like, say, all the kinds of questions that random people are putting into your GenAI platform, and you as a enterprise would like to know what are maybe some clusters of or some areas of questions that's coming in the wild
Yeah.
when it's up in production. It's not possible to create a classification model that has because prior to this pre-GPT era, we would ideally have the classes ready and we would know, okay, it will go under, say if you have a service chatbot, you would know that, oh, somebody would ask for licenses or like keys or like, more FAQs and direct it directly like that. Now it's all over the place. Chatbots are supposed to be, know it alls. So how do you
Yeah.
really that um, workflow that can
Mhm.
classify all these processes? So for
Mhm.
that, the data that you would need to maybe create your few shot based classification processes would be a little bigger because you would ideally want to, based on your market research and based on your understanding of your end users, would like to
Mhm.
put in some considerable amount of variation for each kind of question that can come in.
Yeah.
And you really need to test it out. Sometimes we have seen that, like I've even in my personal projects, I've seen so much that it depends a little bit on trial and error,
Mhm.
as well as like how tailored that answer was that was in your few shot. Like say
Mhm.
in your few shot,
Mhm.
even if it's like say talking about, oh, I want to get the market research for this competitor, and
Yeah.
you had like some framework mentioned, but
Mhm.
the other person who's asking in the production in the wild, your end user wants it for you following some other specific framework. So your intents or like say classification mappings should be flexible enough to understand that variation in question but
Yeah.
still map it correctly with the intent so that you can guide it through the right kind of documents instead of like searching for everything in the backend that you have. So
Yeah.
to sum it up, it's a little depend the answer depends
Yeah.
on like kind of complexity in the processes you have, as well as like how much really you want to like make it like accurate. If it really wants to has to have like 100%
Yeah.
accuracy in everything, you really need to
Mhm.
think through that process of building your few shots to be a more holistic and capture all the nuances.
Makes sense. Makes sense. And earlier you mentioned about if you can, working with your business stakeholder, if you can find the SME's time, it'll be great to kind of jointly generate few short data sets or fine-tuning data sets to improve your accuracy. One, is that a major pain point, getting highly curated financial data for internal accuracy, number one? And number two, do you think that pain point will go away as all the LLMs get better and better, costs keep dropping? So do you think that pain point will go away or will get worse, that whole curated financial high quality data for internal few short or fine tuning?
Yeah. No, I truly believe it's gonna become a little easier because
Hmm.
initially, if you see how would a like a tech person reach out to a business SME and say that, hey, give me data. So maybe say
Hmm.
we will some spreadsheet, some columns, some kind of topics, and then we will ask them to fill it in.
Yeah.
Filling it is a lot of work, even if you
Yeah.
are like find I don't know like half an hour every day from your workflow or like the core financial workflow that you are working on. It takes a lot of time to build that, and
Yeah.
then you have to work with me or like any the tech side of the work, and then
Yeah.
see if it makes sense, and then we go back and forth. It takes a little amount of iteration. Now
Yeah.
with Gen what has happened is that even though say the tech personals are not business SMEs, we have a
Mm-hmm.
general idea and
Mm-hmm.
what we have to do. So maybe we can like prompt some of these large language models to end some of the processes to kind of generate some fill-ins. I wouldn't call it synthetic data because it's not synthetically generated. It's
Mm-hmm.
maybe extracted from a couple of documents based on what we think the output should be, what
Mm-hmm.
the end output should be. And we meaning so the technical counterparts, even though they are not SMEs. Now
Hmm.
you are not giving a blank canvas to the to
Right.
your SME. Sorry, you are giving them something to review, and that's much
Hmm.
easier. Like
Yeah.
that takes less amount of time. It's easy for them to say yes no and correct it on the go, and
Yeah.
then that kind of also invokes their I would say ideas, and they can keep adding in as they go in for each section or each process. So it's
Hmm.
always easy to not start with blank canvas and
Hmm.
like have something to work on off of. So like they say, right, like humans plus machines. So I
Yeah.
hope it's much easier to kind of do more data gathering as well as data cleanups
Mm.
together with. Yes. With the tech, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, makes sense. And once you have the solution in place, how do you come up with this evaluation framework that both meets the business and tech needs? What does that process look like? Are there standard off-the-shelf frameworks that work really well, or do you create these things from scratch? Scratch, I mean, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I think everyone in finance that I know and I have talked of
Mhm.
has utilized a mix of both. There
Yeah.
are definitely some standard benchmarks that you can use to evaluate your techniques or your technical models. Like say,
Mhm.
if you look into this framework called Ragas, what it's basically doing is trying to evaluate or like give some score and then
Mhm.
some uh, I would say feedback on the score that why it scored a particular output based on its context,
Mhm.
relevancy, if it's factual. If you have a ground truth, you can compare that output with like your factuality as well as your truthfulness. Some of these benchmark metrics, it's applied across
Mhm.
industry as well as across models. But once you come into your more I would say business specific use case that you're trying to solve,
Yeah.
there has to be a custom matrix that you are creating, not at the end of the pipeline, but you have to come up with that based on your project business requirements, your discussions with the SMEs, figuring out, okay, now that I have this pipeline set up, once I have the output, what do I measure? And that definition of what custom matrix you're going to track has to happen with your partnership with the SMEs, and it cannot happen in like a tech silo, because I can talk about endlessly about how well the model is performing, but is it actually performing well when it's in production and somebody's uploading a new document, a
Mhm.
new process, a new workflow? Is it abiding by to that rules that they are giving to be reviewed as per the output? So all of these processes really needs to
Mhm.
come in the design phase, in your initial requirement gathering phase, and then you get started to build on the pipeline. Not really. And I think I keep saying everybody, evaluation has always been an afterthought, because
Mhm.
if we are building a predictive model, we would just have some ground truth and go back and forth on the and then do F1 score and precision score and all that, right? It doesn't happen that way anymore. Where GenAI is concerned, it has to happen in a more coherent step by step approach, designed from the start, and then you
Yeah.
build your own.
Yeah, yeah, makes sense. And in scenarios where things go very well after the evaluation, how
Yeah.
how is ROI thought of as defined as? How do people look at that?
So ROI can be multiple things, right? Based on your use case that you're trying to solve. Are you trying to, I don't know, like reduce the amount of like for the document intelligence process that we were talking about? Are you
Yeah.
trying to reduce what is your benchmark? That how much do you want to reduce the manual workload from the analysts?
Mhm.
How much time do you want to save from their calendar so that now they're
Yeah.
freed up more thoughtful research, more thoughtful financial analysis rather than
Mhm.
looking for document that you
Yeah.
can help. So these are like some, I would say, case wise ROI metrics that needs to
Mhm.
be defined. That
Mhm.
why are you building this solution? And I think I think in the tech space it's easy to get blinded by some of these shiny new processes. But again, if you go back and think through more from like a problem first approach, what are you really trying to solve? And once you answer that question, your evaluation parameter, your ROI matrix, your KPI will all come up in
Yeah.
that single discussion. And
Mhm.
sometimes I would say, like, based on all market news that we get, people
Mhm.
tend to forget to do that analysis initially, and they just jump on building stuff and then go back and say, oh, it's not really useful for our end users. What did we do wrong? What
Mhm.
did you do wrong is that you didn't sit through and think through the problem first and then come
Yeah.
up with the tech. You came up with the tech first and then
Mhm.
tried to do something. So, I mean, that is the change of, I would say, thought process. I think everybody needs to like imbibe and make sure they do.
Yeah. Okay. And since you mentioned about what did we do wrong, right? In scenarios where a solution implementation does not go well, it doesn't, it fails, let's say. What are the most common reasons? Is it because the wrong problem was picked to solve? Is it
Mm.
poor quality data? Not the right tech stack? Uh, or like where do things usually fall off?
Yeah, I would say It's kind of a mix. I would say data requirements is usually one of the biggest areas of fail points I have seen, that oh, the
Mm,
data was what I trained the model on, say, or if you are like few shot prompting the incoming process of data, and that data looks completely different when somebody else is testing. So either you didn't do the expectation set correctly with your end users, that this is how the entry point should look like. You didn't do enough education and exposure for them to know that they need to refine their data first to put it into your product, or you didn't understand the business requirement correctly to frame your
mm,
process. That's one area. So I think expectation management, as well as making sure that what really works with the model is communicated correctly to your end
mhm,
users,
mhm.
is also key, so that there's like no frustration and no initial, that shock that, oh, what is this? Like, oh, from the end users, that, oh, I don't really see any value. But have you really tested for which the model was built versus what you
Got
really expected the model to give you? So
it.
there's a difference there. Yeah.
Yeah. And as a AI leader in finance,
Mhm.
what would you say are your biggest problems or pain points that you wish get solved?
I think two biggest areas, I definitely feel that we need more work, and some of the work is coming up. One is in explainability.
Mm,
Um, Explainability not only, and sometimes people think that reasoning is explainability. Reasoning is not explainability. It's just explaining the steps of the processes the model took. But explainability is truly something that if you are an end user, you are a financial economist who's looking at some document that has processed and some I would say formulas applied, you're really
mm,
trying to figure out why the model arrived at that particular step. It's basically what we used to do in the predictive side, right? Like Shapley values, and making sure which decision tree, why did it land in that decision tree, why is
yeah.
that feature importance. We used to
Mhm,
always run feature importance tests, right?
mhm,
Now
mhm.
with GenAI, it has become so hard to kind of
Yeah.
explain that underlying methodology to your business end user who wants to understand it, because that is their forte. But they
Mhm,
are like, oh, we are blindsided, we don't know why is it coming to this. Even if it's right, it's okay, but what if it fails and we cannot catch that fail point? So I think explainability has to be the biggest area where I feel a lot of work needs to be done. But if you look
yeah.
at some of the recent, what is that called, it's called, I think, circuit tracing tool,
Mhm,
that Anthropic recently open sourced.
mhm,
It is trying to do something similar to that. It's kind of trying to do a graph like mapping, that if you
mhm,
have a prompt and if you have like a backend database,
mhm.
it's kind of trying to show the not
Pathways.
level, yeah, not
Mhm,
attention level, but more process, each layer level, each iteration level, where which word it's kind of landing based on the importance scoring it's giving in that process. So
yeah.
I tested it out for a couple of prompts, not like really deeply, but just to get an idea. I definitely feel that's the right step, or like the right, at least the first step.
Mhm.
But yeah, I mean, like explainability has to be like, I would say, like my number number one area of the
Got
biggest
it.
heartaches I get.
I see. Is there a number two?
I would say, I would say number two really needs to be expectation setting, even from the tech side. Like I'm sure
Mhm,
you have read all these paper that Apple came up with, saying that, oh, they are really not thinking, and they're just,
right.
showing you that they're thinking. And there's
Yeah.
similar paper about how LLMs are causal parrots. Like I said, causality is a big requirement, and they talk so smoothly that you must might feel that, oh, they're really giving you a right cause or like a right reason. And
Yeah.
why I show that in courts is because it's debatable what is really causation, based on who is an economics personnel who knows end to end of the process.
Mhm,
Are they really going to cause like that? Are they really going to
yeah.
reason like that? Is the process following that? So I mean, there has to be some, baseline truth to what really some of these models can do, or should
Mhm,
we expect them to do, rather
mhm.
than like fight over saying that, oh no, the research was not. I'm sure you have heard all the back and forth going on of that research. So it's really interesting to see how the industry professionals evolve and, like, kind of try to fight for like a stance. So we need to come to a middle ground and kind of figure out that expectation layer somewhere. It's
Fine.
gonna be
So
easy for all.
explainability and setting expectations. Okay.
Yeah, setting
Awesome.
expectations of really what the LLMs can do and
Okay.
cannot do.
Yeah.
Let's keep it straight. Like, don't make them that they are the saviors of the world. I don't think it's at that layer anywhere. So let's
Mhm.
not like market them as like solver of all problems
Yeah.
kind of tool.
Makes sense. And finally, Jayita, when you're hiring now people for your team, what are you gauging for and looking for?
Yeah, I mean, the expectation again, like interview expectations has also shifted. Like initially, it was more like, oh, on the coding side, now you can just code using Copilot, but you still have to know your framework or your fundamental
Yeah.
understanding. I think the biggest area that even some of my folks, some of my peers who are hiring in different organizations talk about is that do you really understand the workflow integration? Again, why I say that anybody can open up a notebook and call in OpenAI API or like any model API. Llama is open source. You can call in Llama. But what are you really trying to solve? Are you just building like a simple Q&A? Everybody can build a Q&A.
Hmm.
How are you thinking for the problem that you have to solve in this role? How are you setting up user expectation? How are you setting up evaluation frameworks? Which
Hmm.
evaluation frameworks are you reviewing? How are you thinking about the I would say the LLM ops kind of the process, because it's really really important. How are you
Hmm.
tracking model, like degradation? Do you have like proper notification set up? I think that end to end workflow business integration of tech into the business, like I was
Yeah.
saying before, is what drives value, and is that's
Yeah.
where you need to, as like a I don't know, employee or like potential employee, need to show that you can contribute. And that's the biggest part. Like just writing that, oh, I know how to work with LLM or APIs or any open
Yeah.
source APIs. I don't think is like enough anymore.
Yeah. Makes sense. Empathy for the end user and the business and starting from there. Yeah.
How do you really do design? How do you design like a workflow in tandem with the tech?
Yeah. Makes a lot of sense. On that note, Jayita, thank you so much for taking time to do this. It was very insightful. Really appreciate it.
No, thank you very much. Like I said, I can keep talking about AI in finance all the while. Really excited about the space, and thank you very much for having me. And hopefully, yeah, we'll see a lot of new stuff coming into the industry and a lot of impact and ROI, like we want to call it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank
Absolutely. Looking forward to it. Thank you again.